copies of what we're using for. Just,
At some point you have
if you don't mind sharing. Yeah.
Oh,
Hey, how are you? Good.
okay, yeah.
Which might be all here, so we can go ahead and get started. It's 6 o'clock. This is our first rental code committee meeting. Thank you all for coming and for agreeing to be part of this committee. And thank you all for attending and keeping abreast of what's happening. I passed out a few of the draft agendas over there. This is basically a vision casting night where we're just meeting each other and working out the goal of this committee. So we aren't making any big decisions tonight. Just a conversation about how we want to get started with this process, and then setting a date for the next meeting once we've worked out kind of how we want to get there. Would you guys mind just introducing yourselves? I think most everybody knows everybody, except I didn't know some of you. So I'll start. I'm Bethany Gates. I'm one of the City Council representatives for this committee.
Matt Johnson, Cedar Valley Bank lender.
Ron Senius, City Council.
Gary McKenna.
Chad Christoph, landlord.
John Watson, landlord.
Alan Michael Johnson, real estate. Cody Kroll, renter.
Perfect. And we had one other renter that was supposed to be part of this committee but is moving, so we will be filling that role. And then Blake is an advisory person for the board, not an official committee member, but here to just give guidance as needed. On the agendas that I passed out, it's just a rough draft of a mission statement or a goal of the committee. So the City of Vinton Rental Code Committee seeks to ensure the provision of safe and sanitary housing rentals for the residents of Vinton through the creation of a proposed rental housing inspection program, proposed updates to city ordinances, and a process in which unsafe properties can be identified and addressed. This was just something I came up with, stolen a little bit from some other cities based on what the conversation had been at City Council of what our goal is with this committee. If you guys have any thoughts on that, please do share them. Our goal is, of course, not to put in place so many regulations that we're driving you out, but just to make sure we are providing safe housing and keeping Vinton an appealing place for people to live. So this was a kind of a mix from Oskaloosa and Knoxville. There are a couple cities that just recently did their rental code ordinances that are close to our size. Knoxville is about 8,000 people. They took Oskaloosa's rental code and just modified it to fit them. So I wanted to look at cities that were somewhat similar in size to us, and I know somebody on the city council there, and what they've done has worked well for them. So this meeting is really meant to be just talking about how we want to go about creating our own code. So I think probably all of you had seen what Blake had put together just from other cities, kind of an idea of some of the things that we might include in our own ordinance and our own code. We have the option of looking at other cities' codes and piecemealing it together. We could look for a city code that fits our city really well and just needs some minor modifications. We can start from scratch, which probably is not the way most of us want to go. I don't know if anybody here is feeling extra creative and wants to do that, but I am open to absolutely hearing what your guys' thoughts are on the best way to go about this, because we want this to be driven by those of you that are most affected by it. If you have any questions or ideas or thoughts on this, please go ahead and jump in.
I'm going to start,
Yes.
if you don't mind. I guess I wanted, why is this, where did this idea come from, or why are we thinking we need this process now? What's changed or what's going on in the city of Vinton that maybe we're not aware of?
Sure, yep. Ron, would you mind talking about that a
Well,
little bit?
In past experience, some of the properties that I used to deal with were very below standard. And it's a public safety thing, sanitary thing. You yourself went to houses and saw people's issues and told
I'll
them
stop you
about
right
it.
there though, but I took it upon myself to go.
Right, no, I
As
understand.
I believe, many small-town mayors would do.
Right. But I'm just saying that there are, I'm not saying everybody has substandard housing, but from past experience, and I'm sure it's that way still, that there are houses in town that are not above,
They're not quality houses.
right.
And I would think that with your experience, just as my experience, that there are just as many individually home-owned houses that are in that same situation. Now,
Very
the
true.
question I would have, since he brought that up, why did we get to this point? You're trying to legislate how people live in their house, in their apartments actually, and or condos. I don't know how far we go with this. But the problem that we all will have is after we've fixed the landlords and all of them, what are we really gonna do with those individual homeowners that will not, under any circumstances, A Avenue and Point, over by the railroad track, they're anti-establishment people, and every town has a few. It took me 20 years for East 4th Street, where the blind guy lived, and I took a beating for 20 years over that, and my answer was always the same. It will change when there's a move or a death, because you cannot re-educate, regrow those people up. They are what they are. And so, with that said, and I'll be quiet, because I find it a little hard to believe that we got to where we think that if we had provision of safe and unsanitary houses, we all know they're here. But you will not be able to legislate sanitation.
Correct. So right now, our code just doesn't have anything that addresses rentals, and so that's where we
The
have
state
nothing.
code does, young lady.
State code does, but on
That's
some
right.
level, we need our city ordinance to be able to give our city inspector the ability to go in and cite people for different things, but also, we also are interested in making sure that Vinton is an appealing place to live. Our population has continued to decrease over the past few years, so this is one approach in which we can help make sure we have appropriate housing that draws people to the city of Vinton. So I mean, I don't think there's one set reason why we're here. I think it's multifaceted. But right now, we just have nothing in our code that gives renters really any protection or any teeth aside from talking to their landlords. And just if there is an unsafe situation, there's nothing that they can fall back on to.
Have you actually been a landlord?
I have not been a landlord.
Okay.
Mhm. Yep, which is why we have so many of you guys on this committee, because you guys are the ones that are dealing with this, and we don't want to put something into place when we aren't the ones doing it, but.
I only asked that question, young lady, specifically because, have you ever tried to remove someone that is unsafe, unsanitary in a home?
If I may, real quick, there seems, we're getting onto a focus of the lifestyle of the tenants as the purpose of this, and while that is an issue that you all should be concerned about, that could possibly be mitigated a little bit with this code, really the concern is that the structures themselves are supplying the minimum standards for the people. It's not necessarily about the clutter people choose to live in, the dirty dishes they leave stacked up. It's more, do the fire alarms work? Can they get out if there's a fire? That sort of thing, minimum spaces. Less so the lifestyle of the residents, which, while it is an important thing, and some of it is very concerning, that is not the focus of this ordinance.
It's in our mission statement, provisions of safe and sanitary housing rentals.
Which,
One of my concerns in a real life scenario with that is, will a city ordinance and city code supersede renters' rights so that we can proceed to an eviction if there is a sanitary?
Right.
Because like what we've had an example and the experience of a landlord and the renter's relationship, we have a sewer leak into an apartment that is so slow and steady, and it's happened for multiple years. When presented with options for other housing and other issues, the people that were experiencing it chose no. They would not move for a higher rent cost, they wouldn't. And so then when they're presented with the option of kicking another tenant out that is causing the issue, we're also stuck where we weren't given a clear path for an eviction for that. So if we're gonna have city ordinances holding us to that, will they give everybody the ammo to remove those people at the same time?
It does appear as though, and I think that you would agree, Mr. Hanson, that the person that lives in the apartments and or houses that are rented, they have many, many rules in the state code that would assist them, and then there's always that other option, I have young children, I have this, I have that, and you cannot, you can't actually be blatantly hard on those people because of their scenario. And that concerns me, that we're going to leave some of the people that are actually the problem makers, we're gonna have to leave them alone because there isn't any other way to do it.
And they get free lawyers, I'm sorry, they get free lawyers, we don't.
That's true.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
they're in for a battle when they go to the state, when they go to Des Moines with any of these things you try and tell them.
The ombuds,
Bam.
yeah.
And again, these people, I mean, there are codes that exist that when their choices, their personal choices rise to a certain level so as to cause an issue for surrounding property, for truly for themselves, for neighboring people, there is things that can be done. You don't have to ignore them. There are steps that can be taken. And again, the focus is not the messes these people create in their houses. It is primarily the structures. You mentioned sanitary conditions. Yes, messy people can create unsanitary conditions. Neglected plumbing can create unsanitary conditions. So there are
Isn't that
lack
addressed
of.
in the state code?
Well, we have the state code, and we've had the state code for how many years, and here we are.
But, so are you getting complaints from tenants?
I have.
Okay, so
What could you
get a
do about
complaint-
that? If you got a complaint, could you act on that now through the state code?
Yes, and our current building code and current ordinances.
Well, then do it.
This is two parts. This is just we're creating a structure of standards, and we're creating a administrative process to ensure those standards are being continually maintained. And we are going to be proactive and not just reactionary. Because some people won't complain because they're afraid they'll be evicted. They're embarrassed of the way they have to live. So there's a lot of, this is a very multifaceted issue to get into, and I know it's distasteful to some of you, but the things that contractors have seen, the police have seen, I've seen, is also distasteful.
But you're singling out tenants. You're not singling out everybody in the city, because there's just as many messy homeowners as there are tenants. And I would almost tell you there's probably more single-family owned homes that are disgusting than there are rentals. As fire chief, I've been on the fire department over 30 years, and we go into just as many owned homes as we do rentals that are
I would
mess.
agree with you, Gary,
Yeah, I
but
don't disagree.
So you're,
those people are paying a house payment where they're paying,
so are our
landlords.
renters, so are our
Right,
renters.
right,
Our
right.
renters are paying my
but
house
they're
payment.
paying you.
Right, and
they're
that's
paying
paying, and
you.
I have a house payment to
So
pay.
that's what I'm saying, is it,
Well, it just seems like we're singling out the wrong group. These people are renting because they don't have money. Now we're going to go in there and charge probably fees for this to happen, and that's gonna make their rent go up. I don't get, again, I'm not,
well, I guess what I'm gonna say is,
you're punishing a whole lot of people for a few bad players or some
Okay,
violator,
okay.
potentially. It sounds like to me, if you're
But-
getting complaints,
I guess what would the punishment be if there's nothing wrong with your properties? There is no punishment. You're looking at a minimal fee, because we haven't even really discussed what fees will be.
Right,
And the point
right.
isn't to generate money for this. I mean, obviously, we have to cover administrative costs of some of the time involved in doing this, but, you know, if there's nothing wrong with your property, there's no punishment.
Yeah, but we
Still
gotta pay for
fine,
you
still
to inspect
pay.
it, so why should we have to
We
pay you?
haven't even discussed what those fees will look like.
Yeah, but
And
you're talking fees though.
minimal fees.
Yeah, but why should we have to pay you to inspect it?
I don't work for free.
Well, the city should pay you, not us.
I guess what I'm looking at in this whole thing, and I've been thinking about this, is this stuff's been going on in Vinton for years. So, if, and Blake, you're probably gonna shoot me, but, okay, you've got a renter in there, and that renter is there for 1 more year, 2 more years, 10 more years. After that renter leaves, you rent that property out to somebody else, the meter changes to somebody else. That's when the inspection happens. We don't go in until that happens,
Till it's an empty place.
till it's an empty place.
That would give you, Blake, all the opportunity to see what the plumbing is, if there is if there are windows that are substandard. Actually, that isn't a bad idea because I believe that the council, from what I'm hearing, you made your mind up, this is gonna happen.
The council has had this on the radar for a while. And part of this, so I don't think that's the intent, is that we wait for a rental to be empty, because part of this is to create a process so that renters are covered, because right now, they're not. There's no process in place for them to say, hey, there's this significant safety issue with this property, and there's no route they can go, and they may not feel comfortable going to the person they're renting
He
to.
doesn't have that ability to go deal with safety issues? I thought you
If
did.
reported.
If reported.
I'm not just gonna start knocking on doors and asking to look at these properties.
Right. Okay, okay. And
Just
so.
like crimes happen all the time and nothing happens if no one reports them.
Exactly. The difference there is that I believe that the landlords association that we may or may not have in place, I think, and I told them the last time we had a meeting, there's a few landlords that need their ass kicked. Absolutely do. But in the same token, I honestly believe, and I really believe this, the plumbers and the electricians that go into these houses, if they go in, and policemen, if they see that, they need to tell too. They need to be able to tell you, and if they see it, they're reporting. It'd be like a social worker that knows that somebody's dad smokes dope or something. They're mandatory reporter. Why isn't that way?
Well,
Which
if
I've
you
done
have,
it
if you
before,
have a
John, and it never worked.
if you have a contractor who every time they go into a rental, they turn around and tell the city, XYZ is wrong with this place, and then we show up the next day after they're there, are you gonna keep hiring that contractor?
Actually, if there's a contractor and he feels that bad about that house, I believe they shouldn't go back to it anyway. Matter of fact, I made a statement the other day at the landlord's meeting that if you're a contractor in this house, and I've been in and out of a lot of houses too, just as many as Mr. Assini's probably, if you're a contractor, you have more leverage than anybody else. You call the guy that owns that up and you say, hey, you clean that shithole up because I'm not gonna fix it. The response to the contractor was, well, John, the kids they're gonna be cold. You mean to tell me you don't think there's a lot more going on in that family if they're living in that situation? They're not gonna be just cold, they're gonna be hungry, they're gonna be sleeping in bed bug beds. There's a lot of things that are issues that I believe we haven't tried anything, and we probably should. I thought you could do more if you knew it.
If I was told, but I don't get told a lot.
So, is it possible there are that few that you don't get told? You think there's that many that you're not being told
Oh,
about?
I hear it from the PD, they go into a lot of these places regularly and see it. I hear it from, Ron's been in and out of these a lot, he's seen a lot of them.
But back in Ron's case,
That was 25
in
years
Ron's
ago.
case, he hasn't done that much this last 10 years, have he?
No, but there are some that I do go into, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But, so if you're going in there and you're charging somebody for plumbing, are you getting a plumbing permit? doesn't that allow him to go in there too?
Yeah.
There you go.
There we go.
So, once again, if in fact Ron goes into a house and he's working for someone and he got a plumbing permit, he can tell you.
And you know what? The rental properties that get permits for their stuff and I go there, those properties are fine. I don't see a lot of permits for rental properties.
Then who should we be talking to? The plumber, the electrician, or the landlord?
I guess I'm not sure what your question is.
My question
There seems
is-
to be a lack of reporting that we're hoping to rely on for this, which we could have been relying on since we've all been living in rental properties, owning rental properties, and that seems to not have been working.
I'm not sure how we, the landlords, can fix that problem that the city has.
Well, this is how we're doing it. We're creating a process where renters have something in place that protects them. So I'm not a landlord, but with my profession, I work with a lot of low-income people who do rely on rental housing. And just by virtue of being low-income, a lot of these folks feel like they don't have the option to take a concern to the landlord, or they don't have systems in place to help them out. Just, there's a power dynamic, whether you like it or not, there is a power dynamic, and some people will not feel comfortable bringing a concern to you. So this is just meant to create a system so that these people have a route, so they have an action steps that they can take to do so that covers them and makes them feel hopefully safer to do that, and hopefully not feel like they're going to end up losing their rental because they reported an actual safety issue. So you mentioned, like, in these homes there are people who, you know, they're hungry, they don't have enough money. This is not going to fix all of that, but it is a step we can take to create more stable housing situations. It's a step. It is, as we've mentioned multiple times, a multifaceted issue, so this is just one of the ways. And then I was talking with Chad a week ago, and we were talking about how there's just a lack of resources in general. So along with this, ideally, we would be able to create as a city a list of resources for you guys, so that when you have these tenants who are struggling with more of those physical needs, then we have a place where you can help send them to or refer them on to. But again, this is just one step that we're taking, and I think the city as a whole will do more, but we have to, we can't do it all at once. So, I mean, I think this is just a starting point, a stepping stone.
With that, protections for the landlords too.
Yes.
Because it's,
Yes,
it doesn't work vice versa.
yep,
We have plenty that just trash and live in horrible, they leave dogs in their apartments for 4 days, and here's all, there's not a lot of protections for us,
Yeah.
other than the 3 to 4 weeks to get them through, to start the eviction process. They pay up at the end, and they habitually are a month and a half plus, and problems, deteriorating the property that we have mortgaged and have money into.
yeah.
So it has to work both ways.
Right, and, you know, a lot of those things can be helped with strong lease agreements that lay out black and white what's expected of the upkeep of the tenant's space, and any violation of that, I mean, you broke the lease contract. And, you know, I wanna make sure you guys know, if we go into a place and it has unsanitary conditions as a result of the choices of the tenant, that's not gonna come back on the landlord. Those fines or whatever will be against the tenant for what they have done. Anything that goes to the landlord will be purely for the real property, you know, the structure, the mechanicals, that sort of thing. If they've let a dog crap all over the floor for a week, and I cite them for unsanitary conditions, you're not gonna pay that fine. That won't go to you.
Has that been tested in court?
Why would I charge you for their dog?
No, I mean, has it been tested in court that you're gonna take someone to court, and I say that in extreme layman's terms. Someone doesn't wash the dishes the way that the city wants them to, can you, now you're,
If they've created an unsanitary condition leading to infestation or unhealthy conditions for other people, yes, absolutely.
that's already been in Vinton County, and that's actually gone through the courts. You see, we couldn't do it for 25 years.
I don't think you tried.
Oh, I'm sorry, but I did. Once again, the blind man on East 4th Street, when I went and talked to the judge about him, you know what he told me? He said, don't be mean to that guy, he's already got enough problems.
Well,
I
in
said,
just
well-
the 2 years I've been here doing this,
Yeah.
the courts seem very tired of nuisance stuff
Mm-hmm.
and are very ready to just say, clean up.
That's a good thing, because it wasn't that way for 20 years.
I believe the winds have changed with that.
Okay. And Chief, as far as your employees are good policemen, they go into a bad place, I would think that they would be mandatory reporters to the safety, to Mr. Hanson. Isn't that, don't you believe that's true?
Well, they do report quite a bit to Mr. Hanson.
Okay.
So it is getting reported to you, then, through him.
Through the
Okay.
PD,
So, but that is a report to you?
yes.
Uh-huh,
Is that something that he can act on it?
yeah.
You sure can look into it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So we have, it isn't as though we don't have anything in place.
But are we relying on a domestic assault call for somebody to have something reported for them? Like, the concern is like, what's happening to get a policeman there? Are we waiting for somebody to have an incident like that before they have a reporting option? That doesn't fix
I see.
the ability
Okay.
for a renter to have
Yeah.
a reporting issue, a reporting opportunity.
Yeah.
So, yes, absolutely, they can
And I
report
think-
that way, but
That's a good statement. That's a good statement. We shouldn't have to wait for an issue like that to happen. But as I say, I believe our patrolmen on duty, the electricians and plumbers, if they contact you, that to me gives you that first step to get into the door.
Yes, of course. We're not disagreeing with that. We're saying that's not enough. Based on what exists in town, that is not enough.
But the only problem with that is, John, if a electrician or plumber is your electrician or plumber, and he reports one of your tenants, are you gonna use him again? So is he gonna lose business? Is he gonna-
about it?
No, I'm just asking.
I understand. but
No,
that's-
I'm just
That's
asking.
my reply though, Ron, is if,
But that's what the electrician or plumber is gonna ask himself. Am I gonna lose this
If it's-
customer?
if it's as bad as, and not to pick on plumbers or electricians, because I got a lot of friends that are in that deal, but if it's as bad as they say it is, they shouldn't, I wouldn't think they'd worry that much about losing that person, because.
I understand, because I've been in houses I've walked out of.
There you go. So have I.
The struggle, I think,
Some
with the
guys won't.
with the reporting is, even if you have a tool in place, that's safe for them to come in and get something structurally handled, the cost still gets passed down, and they are out of that apartment. Because if they're at the $300 to $600 price point, and you ask the landlord to go in and update fuse panels to circuit breakers, or other,
That's outside their realm.
I'm just saying, if you,
Oh,
when you start asking this, that person, whether that property needs to go away or not, that tenant loses that housing.
Yeah,
So
and-
you're still gonna struggle with that reporting because they know.
Right, and unfortunately, I mean, that's gonna be something that we're gonna face as this eventually gets put in place and the years following that. Just because your property is $300 doesn't mean it has to be a horrible condition place to live, an unsafe place. Just because it's $300 doesn't give it the okay to be unsafe.
true.
So it is unfortunate, but yes, some of these places which are so cheap, if they're gonna be fixed and made livable by minimum standards, the price is gonna go up. It's just decades of lack of maintenance for some of these places is not an excuse to continue that way. Just because the price will go up because you finally had to do something.
So
So
if we
then
get
clarity
all
of the
this-
position, is the city actually trying to get rid of housing like that and low-income renters?
Oh, we would absolutely not try to do that, but
But
it
if we
is.
did, if we fix them all up, let's take the worst ones, let's fix every one of them up, and you're right, it's gonna increase rents. And then we no longer have enough housing for low income, then the government comes in and puts a huge project somewhere.
Sure do. You'll have avenues all over.
We have to
and
have
we can't
housing for
regulate
these
that.
people with lower rents, and the more we improve, the more the
And
rents go up.
I don't disagree.
What happens to these people? What are we gonna do to them? Where are we gonna put them? Where do we kick them out to?
Do we have that many properties that are so unsafe that people are gonna have to move out? I guess that's where I feel like.
No, they
if we're-
can't afford it anymore if the
So-
house gets
Well,
remodeled.
I feel like
We're not talking remodels.
Yes,
Well,
we're talking about just
depending on what
basic
it needed,
safety, like
you
if
know.
there's a fire, can the firemen get in there to put the fire out? I mean, so we're talking basic safety things, so if it's a safety issue, those should be improved
Yes.
upon.
I agree.
And part of this process is we will be able to create a timeline where these things are slowly implemented, so you're not expected to, if you have a property that does need more work, you're not having to go in and have it done in 6 months. You have a timeline and a priority things, like we're looking for basic safety. We're not looking for brand new remodels.
Well, I don't think anybody's arguing like if the fire department or police can't get in there to help somebody get out. But a $6,000 expense is $500 a month. And if they're paying $500, that doesn't cover any of the other expenses. So it would have to be should be some type of cost sharing if there are gonna be fees.
But realistically, if you've owned this property for 10, 20 years, you've made your money out of it, realistically.
Doesn't matter, you
It's
you
time to
invest
put
money
something
too to make
back
money,
into it.
right?
Pardon?
You invest money to make money, so what if it's paid for? You're still
Right,
making money.
But you have to invest more to make it livable.
Yeah, but who says we're
So
not?
if there's a furnace with a crack in it, you got carbon dioxide going in there, you gonna let that person live there, just keep living there?
We got detectors for that.
I think, again, we're going back, we're punishing everybody in the city that has rentals for a few violators. So why can't we just address the violators? Sounds like you guys know who they are. Crack down on them.
We don't have a code to address the violators.
Right.
And we're not
Yeah,
punishing.
we've got the
I
state
can't just
code.
go into their house. This is creating an ordinance that allows for regular inspections, which removes the need for someone to say, hey, come look at my rental house. Look how terrible it is.
How about if you put it in the paper and request it? If anybody living in condition they feel that they want you to inspect,
Yeah.
you get a call.
Put it in
Is
there.
is
Put it
that
in the
what
city
you
bill.
guys have all found that other communities are doing, is just word of mouth rental quality checks?
First of all, when somebody's renting it, I've talked to a few of them, they're not gonna let you in. Cause they rent that house, that's their property at that time. It's not mine, I own the building, but I don't own the inside of it. Once they rent it, it's their property. They don't wanna let you in, they don't have to.
But if they want you to, we could allow them to.
Yes, and if we have this ordinance, a civil search warrant can be, if they refuse entry and there's a mandatory inspection. one
See,
of
now
those
you're
could be-
talking mandatory.
One of those, the inspections would be mandatory.
Well, see, there you're talking mandatory.
They would be.
Why can't they just go back to when the place comes open, then you inspect it?
Well, would that not be mandatory?
That ain't mandatory then, once it's open, then you can come in and look at it.
But, I mean.
And it could be the same as when a private house is sold, a certificate of occupancy again.
And some
every new one.
communities do that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, mandatory every 3 years or mandatory when
I know.
it changes tenancy? I mean, it's still a mandatory inspection. You're just talking
Yeah,
regular.
but there's a lot of, I've talked to a few of my tenants, and they're just flat not gonna let you in, because they don't give a crap what you think. Because they,
Well,
you
as
know,
I
the way they
said-
live, and
as
that's the
I
way it
said, I
is.
don't see the point, everything right now, as far as I'm concerned, is grandfathered in. Which is, it sounds, you're shaking your head, Gary. But
That doesn't make
right
sense.
now, well, no, it's true. We don't have a goddamn ordinance.
Right.
So, from this
But
point.
we have a state code that can be followed, that is, got quite a few teeth in it.
So what are you talking about grandfathering?
Okay, everybody that has a rental property right now, okay, no inspections have been done for years. And I touched on this earlier. That's grandfathered in. No inspections have been done. John's done a whole bunch of houses, and there wasn't ever an inspection on any of them. I know there wasn't.
He's been in the house I'm working on now.
Well,
planning.
that's,
We're talking prior.
now, John, For the
I
last how
understand.
many years?
And I know exactly what you're saying, but in the same token,
There was a permit issue for all of those, wasn't there?
But
Rarely.
What
the,
happened?
the inspector at the time, when all that stuff was done, didn't do his goddamn job, which you and I fought about numerous times. And that's the city's fault. But now we have an inspector, which I've wanted for all these
those
years.
issues that you're speaking are not the same issues that we are dealing with tonight. We're
Right,
talking about
right,
rental
but
property.
that's what I'm saying, okay. You have all these rental properties right now. They've all been inspected, they've all been grandfathered in basically from the city. Jerry went and looked at everything that you did.
Are we, I mean, grandfathering, are we including places that have bedrooms and windowless rooms? Is that grandfathered in as being okay?
I don't think he means grandfathered in as being okay, I think he just means they haven't been through
Isn't
an
that covered in the
inspection,
state
like they
laws?
just kind
We
of
have
skipped that
landlord-tenant
inspection
laws,
piece.
right?
But again, I
And we have
wouldn't
a
know that
state,
it's
and
a
we have a
windowless
state code, so
room.
we amend it, so you have access to the property to visually inspect them. Like when they come vacant every 2 years or something like that, or a mandatory inspection. That's all we're looking for, is to amend them so you have access to look at the property.
Right, so I guess
'Cause we
I'm not
have-
sure-
We have the code,
Yeah, so we're not looking to do more really than that.
right. Just a vehicle for you to get in there and inspect them when they
To
come
make sure
vacant
they
or
meet
whatever.
minimum standards.
Because
Yeah.
I can't
And we have a code
see,
for that.
I
A
can't
state
see Blake calling one of your renters and saying, hey, I'm gonna come look at your house.
What are the
All my
minimum
houses.
standards?
No, I understand that, but there's
So
some.
minimum standard, like the bare minimum you need to do, I mean, we're talking minimum room size.
No,
you know, you gotta
I'm just
provide
saying
a
it-
bathroom with reasonable privacy. Your
I know where
bedrooms
I'm
need to
going.
have 2 egresses, you know,
That's all in code, state
So-
code?
that's all in the building code.
Okay.
And, you know,
Well, this
we
is a
can,
rollout
we
too,
can,
like, again,
we've,
this is,
yeah,
we're talking
really
about
this is
this
about
is over
making
the
sure
course
the
of
insides of these places
Right,
are meeting
right.
those
We
minimum
put
So
this
it's
in
basically
place
getting you the
tomorrow and
vehicle
everything's
or
done,
the access
you know,
amended
that
the
this
law
is a
or the
multi-year
ordinance, so you have
process.
access to the property at
It's not,
reasonable
it's not
time.
gonna be
Yeah,
done tonight.
we're not,
It's not
I mean,
gonna be
obviously
done
these are
tomorrow night.
existing
It's gonna be done
structures,
for another
but we're not
year.
looking
How do you
for
feel about
above,
this?
we're not going
Being
beyond
a
what
renter.
would be required if you built a new home. I mean, granted, you know, obviously you build a new home, you're putting breakers, not fuses in, we're not requiring updates
You
of
don't
that.
want to bring an older home in compliance with
House
current
once a
building
year,
codes.
No,
every
just
2
that
years
it's meeting
or
minimum
whatever.
standards.
So what are you gonna do about them houses, like you say, the windows
So
in the
this is
bedrooms,
not
they
a
were built that
cleanliness
way.
inspection. It is a
So what are you gonna do about that?
structural
They
safety.
weren't built
Everything
that
in
way.
here says,
Well, if there's a
Nobody
freaking,
builds a
sanitary.
windowless
Yeah,
bedroom.
That's a-
sanitary,
If the-
there's
well,
no holes in the roof.
it sounds like there's some of them got it that way.
It wasn't originally built that way. It
How do
may
you
have
know it
been
wasn't?
modified,
But as Matt said.
because the house is from the
You got
1800s.
two different,
well, if there's a sewer line
If there's a
leaking in
sewer
one of
line
my
leaking,
houses,
then-
I expect my tenant to move out if I don't fix it.
They
Right.
won't, and
Well-
and so that's honestly what we're gonna get into is provided other housing, other options, others, and just why they won't report, is they will not, they do not want the
Yeah,
rent
but
to
realistically,
increase.
if a sewer line's backed up and it's filling the basement up, yeah, they have to move out and find something until that gets taken care of. But if there's a sewer stack from upstairs bathroom coming down the wall and it's cracked in it and there's sewage going in the basement, that can be fixed in one day.
If there's if I have a leaky toilet and my tenant doesn't call me, I'm liable to kick them out because they didn't call me, and then I got a
It's
bigger
gonna
mess
ruin your
down the
floor.
road.
It's gonna ruin
So,
your property.
I guess it all goes back to if these tenants are so upset, they need to be able to, they have to call somebody and let us know what's going on. And if there's people that ignorant that are living in a house that has a leaky sewer line, then I don't think all the rules that we make are ever gonna help those people.
Well,
That's
and-
craziness.
I mean, it keeps coming up that we're punishing everybody instead of a few bad players. Coming up with this ordinance is what's gonna help enact some things on those bad players. Like, this is not meant to punish the people who are taking care of their properties and they are safe properties. This is to give an avenue for those players that you guys are referring to. You guys apparently know who they are. I don't know who they are.
I don't know who they are,
but
but it
if-
sounds like there's a lot of them
But
in town, the way it
if
sounds.
there are some, this gives us that vehicle to actually enforce those codes. So it's not going to punish the people who have taken care of their properties and do have safe standards and safe properties. Like, this is meant to give a vehicle so we can address these unsafe issues. And again, we're not getting into whether a person cleans their kitchen or their bathroom or not. The sanitary part is strictly speaking for the structural things that could be impacted.
And one thought with that is if it is from the city standpoint, safe and sanitary for the betterment of Vinton and the community, any administrative fees should be put in a pot to be used for some of these changes that do not change the quality of life necessarily for that renter or their rent, but if there's, hey, we'll go 50-50 like the sidewalks. Sidewalk needs fixed, we'll pay X amount of dollars. Where you have that in there, that'll go a long ways.
Sure, something to help offset if there's a problem.
Because the tenants have all the protections, like they had said about free lawyers and legal aid and other resources, and the landlords don't.
Sure.
One thing we discussed over here, we kind of got separate discussions going on, but we were discussing that, the safety part of it and egress for a bedroom window. And here, coming back to what I mentioned before is, so let's say I have this building and he comes in and it's like, your mounted window space here does not meet egress code. So we're tearing out and the walls of the whole building everywhere, putting bigger windows in. Those tenants will have to move out, and when it's done, the price will go up and they will not be able to afford to come back. And where do they go? Because everybody else is gonna have to start creeping them up too. Where are these ladies gonna go?
We're gonna have a tent city in town.
Tent city, that's it.
That starts
And
with
then
P and that rhymes with P and that
Right
stands
under
for
the
pool.
bridge.
We got trouble, my friend.
And so what it's gonna get down to as you walk through that path is, we
Yeah.
are inadvertently or advertently kicking out low-income people out of town.
So is that something I have to be worried about? Is you're like, that window's not
Well,
big
so,
enough?
okay, so,
Woo, that's really
okay,
bad.
so this is the International Property Maintenance Code, which like is super detailed and stringent on, this is what a lot of communities with amendments use for this. This says a window that a normal sized person can fit through. It doesn't lay out what the residential building code says of this many square feet. It says a window that a person could fit through. So we're not saying you need to put in.
And I like that, trust me, I like that.
Yeah, and
But
so that's
some
why
of the
there would
people
be-
have changed over the years. When they built the house in the 40s,
And some of those people
anybody
won't,
could get out the window.
and some of those people won't fit out a code compliant window. So, I mean, so, you know, that's part of why we would also create some code as far as the standards, because we can tailor it to the needs of the community. I'm not gonna go into a house that's 100 years old where the windows are like this wide and say, no, those all have to come out. No, a person could fit through it. But we're not, again, we're not looking to punish people. We're just wanting to make sure that people are safe and
You
secure.
checked my windows, didn't you, bud?
Yes, I did. It was reported by a fellow contractor.
The fellow contractor,
Oh,
seriously? That I put smaller, you hire World Windows and I tried to make them smaller? Who's the dumb shit that said that?
it's not an official report.
That costs money to
Give the name.
downsize them and make them bigger.
But
Going
you
to
will
the
have
same
that
size.
contractor come back.
You know, and I know the reason why, is because the same reason I got turned in on every house I've ever worked on. Well, that son of a bitch was the mayor, he gets away with murder. I haven't murdered anyone for years. But the point is, and I think, I like the idea that you have to have, I understand you need some bite in your yip-yo. Yip-yo is what you gotta go talk to people. That's what mayors used to do. You go up there and, hey, listen, your neighbors, you know, clean this mess up, or eventually, could be months down the road, but eventually the city's gonna do it. A Avenue again is a case in point. But I think that I think she's got a good idea of, I don't believe there are that many houses that are in that category.
So it shouldn't be too much of a concern.
It isn't any concern of mine except for the fact that I feel like some of my fellow landlords who rely on that money for part of their living are concerned about what investments they're gonna have to make if, for instance, you come and say, well, John, and I'll tell you, I've got an apartment at 309 East Fifth Street that does not have a window in the bedroom. And when I told my wife, I says, you know, it never occurred to me that that should have a window in the bedroom. She says, well, how are you gonna fix that? I said, take the whole wall out, and then he'll have all the living room windows he can jump in. The point is, you're gonna have to be kind of thrifty to get through this whole mess. And you're gonna have to have a lot of common sense, because the fact of the matter is, there are many, many houses in town that have 2 kids living upstairs, and the first bedroom is right in front of the second bedroom. And I believe, I heard a rumor that even that doesn't meet standards.
Now, it depends on the style of home. If it's a single-family home, and they're all family, I mean, they're egressing through a family member's room. They
Right.
have that door, they have their window.
Right.
It's different if you have a multifamily home, and the only other egress for this person is to go through his neighbors. That's different. And that is laid out in rental
That
codes
makes
as well.
perfect, I think that makes perfect sense to all the people that are in this room right today. I would venture to say that there are, if you can find 3 of those in Vinton, I'd be amazed. A rental property that one guy has to walk through another person's property to get out.
Which that would be great. And again, if that's not the issue, there's no punishment. I mean, if there's not, if the issues don't exist, then we just have this code taking up a couple pages in our code book, and that's it. And nobody has to really do anything. The only people who are really going to suffer with this are people who really have issues. And when I say suffer, I just mean, you know, they'll have to fix things. And being thrifty is what has gotten some of these properties to where they are.
Something for the city to consider as well. Ron had mentioned most have gotten their investment out of it. The worst properties that everybody's picturing need completely bulldozed down. If you ask a landlord to start fixing different structural things or finding it, they're going to walk away from that property. So then it's on city expense to raise and take care of it, and the time it takes to do that. So if in our head, if we're thinking the worst properties, there's gonna be a financial commitment on the city's end.
And unfortunately, that's the reality of properties like that. Because if a person has been willing to let a property go to that point, they can just walk away. If they don't care about their standing in the community, or their credit, or the fact that we took them to civil court, if they don't care about any of that, it's always going to end up being the city's responsibility. I mean, a lot of my bigger projects, that's the way it works. If the property owner is willing to just walk away, that's it, that's the end. It's the city's responsibility to deal with it. And we can either leave it standing until it falls in on itself after X amount of years, or the city just has to do something about it. That's unfortunately, we already know that that's the reality. And council discussed that just the last meeting and was very frustrated that is the way it works.
But that's only gonna happen with a one-off situation.
Correct.
If somebody has 5 or 6 rental houses, you've got some teeth. You can go to court. He's got other property that's gonna be able to be had there, so that's it. I don't think there's very many renters that just have one house that is a total piece of crap.
That is true.
So I think there's plenty of teeth for you to go get money back from those. People aren't gonna walk away from that and just, yeah. And they might try, but you've got some avenues.
And again, the situation on the city side with things like that is very much like the landlords with their tenants. The citizens have all the protections in the world, all the chances. And if, you know, we can go after people in situations like that, and it's just gonna rack up attorney bills and time, and in the end,
Should be able to be passed on to that.
maybe you
homeowner.
don't get that much out of them. It's very much the same as landlord tenant as city citizen, when it comes down to that.
Do you suppose that there's units out there that you would inspect and go through and like, why am I even looking at this particular place? And know that even in the future.
In the good way?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So then, let's just say, why would that one have to pay these fees then? To have it
Equity.
routinely done, you know darn well you're walking and looking around and there's not gonna be anything there.
Fairness. You can't not charge some people and charge others. That's not fair. And again, you know, these fees, we all, in the previous talks, we've imagined these fees to be minimal. And you mentioned a cost sharing program. The only way that a cost sharing program would make any sense or have any money in it would be if the fees were substantial. So the more money you want in a pot to the city to help you fix things when needed, the more we'll have to charge you to make that actually work. I mean, the idea is that really these fees are just going to cover just, you know, the extra time I'll spend doing some inspections or the keeping of the record list of rental properties in town. I mean, we're talking minimal fees. We're not looking to, you know, pay for extra employees of the city to do this program. That's just not it at all.
Blake, you got any idea how many rentals are in town?
There are, I had a list, and I know there's 13% of the housing in town is rentals. There's, my brain is waffling between 700 and 300, and I don't recall, I do know it's 13%.
426 when I left the post office.
And there's probably more today than that.
Well, we lost
Yeah, we lost them and then we rebuilt.
92 during the flood and the derecho and then the tornado
Yeah.
that came in 2016.
So how much are you thinking? There's gotta be numbers.
Oh, it should be easy with the city clerk. All she has to do is look, everybody that pays for garbage pickup in duplexes, that means your renters.
Yeah, I'm talking fees.
Yeah, we're like average.
We're not to that point yet.
Well, you've gotta have a number in mind.
No,
Is it
we don't.
$10?
We
or
haven't
is it
even
a-
thought about it.
Oh,
We haven't
okay.
even thought about it.
$5?
This is the first meeting.
Okay,
We're-
well, there's also been a draft ordinance done, so
It
there's been
wasn't
some
a
thought
draft
put in it.
ordinance, it was, here's what some other cities have done, so kind of just an idea.
Well,
And even going through that, the city
It says
council looked at
draft
that and
rental
said,
code.
the city
For the
council
city of
looked at it and said, there's a lot of things we
I
would
know,
never
I know.
include for our city. So that was not meant to be a draft that we're working off of.
So if there's 13% or less, wouldn't it make more sense to spend our resources fixing up other owner-occupied homes? Or is it just the avenue that landlords are business owners that you're able to attack that?
So-
Because we're going after 10% of town.
In my conversations with other building departments, you know, this is the number one question that landlords say as a pushback. Why are you doing this to us specifically versus privately owned properties? Because you have a contract with someone who's living in your property, giving you money. There's a bond, a trust there that needs to be ensured that it's being upheld. And again, private houses, the same rules apply as far as minimum standards on safe conditions and stuff, but it's their house, they're paying for it. If, you know, I can visually see from the outside that there are issues, I have things I can do about it. You know, if someone has to enter that building and says, this house is filled with bugs, or, you know, there's 100 cats in there, there are things you can do. But, you know, some communities, someone gets shut off, get their water, their power shut off. Some communities, the building department is there within 24 hours placarding the house saying, must be vacated, this is not fit for human occupancy. Rental, private, whatever, and you gotta get out unless you get your power, water, whatever turned back on, because this is not a suitable habitat for a human. So, I mean, there
But
are.
isn't that a good route to go? Because it seems like we're passing on the cost to fix 10% of the properties on the people that have an investment in them, because, as you said, it's hard to go after a private citizen. It's harder and it's on city resources.
And
But
again,
wouldn't that be
this
better?
cost is not even a real thing yet, and it's gonna be minimal.
Well, not the administrative cost to fix things up, because you're going after people that have the means, or should, in theory, have the means to fix it, versus the city taking it on themselves. Because if 90% of the other properties need the sewer and water shut off because you've noticed X, Y, Z and they're not taking care of it, and then going in after that, I mean, isn't that a better avenue for the city to clean things up?
No. I mean, I don't know if you're aware of how many people get shut off every month. I mean, it would be an endless chore just to deal with that. And again, these people, their power is shut off because they don't have any money. And you can't squeeze blood out of stone. And, you know, you own properties, you have some money. You can probably make sure that the furnace is supplying adequate heat. You know, that sort of thing. Chasing utility shutoffs is not the way to
Because
improve the
if
city.
if someone hasn't been paying their gas bill or whatever, that's your property, and the gas gets shut off, pipes freeze up, you're gonna spend a lot of money. So, you look out for yourself in the same token, correct? So.
Now, we get a notice from the gas company that it's getting shut off.
Gas gets shut off.
Right.
So I
Pay the
can,
gas bill, can't shut it off in the winter time.
No, they can't.
No, they won't shut it off in the winter time.
No,
They won't shut it off.
That's what I'm saying.
That's stupid.
Can't afford it.
They won't shut
winter
it
time,
off.
they can't shut it off anyway, so.
Right, they'll shut off your water, not your electricity.
Right.
So, ideally, what would be your ideal situation, Blake? How many times, once a year, every 2 years, to do inspections?
I think, I mean, with, you know, the capacity of my office, I mean, it's just me. It would be just me doing it. And this is, I see this in a lot of other similar sized communities. It's every 3 years. Once every 3 years. You know, and you know, ideal situation, we have a period of time where all landlords be required to register. So we have a roster of who all owns these properties, which properties they are. You would pay a fee for that registration. You know, I don't know if,
So now why do we have to pay a fee to register?
because it would take time for us to deal with
Why
that
why
list.
should that be our cost?
Well, I guess that can be discussed. If the committee and council decides that we can do this entire thing for free, then we will. So, I mean, that's not up to me, but, so there would be an upfront fee, maybe there's a fee per unit, maybe not, whatever, and then there would be, you know, I don't know if we would try to inspect all units initially, and each one would have a fee with the inspection, and then it would be every 3 years. I don't know how that initial rollout would look necessarily, but it would, I mean, that's what it would be.
Well, if there are three, just say 300, that's one a day,
Actually,
for a whole year.
It's gotta be more than that now.
Yeah. And
I still think that realistically, since we're just starting this little process here, that the landlords that have tenants right now, if a tenant changes, once we get this adopted, if a tenant changes, then the inspection happens. I mean, I just don't see, we can't go in unless you see something really bad from the street, Blake.
Right.
I do not see being able to walk in there and say, I'm gonna look at your house.
Yeah, and I think at least the beginning of this, I think that's a very reasonable thing. It makes it easier to truly inspect the property. If there are any issues that need to be addressed, it makes it easier for the owners to actually do those things. They don't have to deal with working around a human. I think that's very reasonable. You know, the only thing is, my only concern would be if we had in place some sort of minimum standards and we're only doing it when they vacate, and, you know, maybe they've been living there and there was, you know, none of the windows open. The building caught fire because of shoddy electrical and they died inside. And their family goes, well, you guys have minimum standards. Why wasn't it inspected? Why did you allow them to live there? That would be my only concern with that
Well,
route.
that's what I say, to get the ball rolling, this would be the starting point. And then maybe go to the every 3 years or whatever for this property, for that one property.
I imagine it would roll out with something like if it's not vacated, if there's not a tenant change in the first year or two or something like that, then then it needs to be registered.
Right,
in the
right.
state, it's something like
That-
that. But the point is, it's gonna be a slow rollout, because we're not just gonna put this in place and expect all of the properties to right at
Right,
the
no,
second be
no,
up to
I don't
this.
expect that at all.
No, and that's just unrealistic, wildly unrealistic.
Really, yes.
Yeah, cause there's no way in hell he's gonna be able to do his
Yes.
job, and then go inspect all these properties every year. No.
It wouldn't, I don't think it would ever be
It would never be every
annually,
year.
all properties annually, I don't think that would happen.
The cities I've looked at have been every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, like it's not something that's frequent. It because this is basic, safety standards, that's not something that should be changing over the course of a couple of years. Unless you get a tenant in there that's messing your stuff up, in which case.
Do you
hopefully-
feel like the city could be taking on some liability here when we just mentioned that? So a house burns down, somebody's killed in it, because bad wiring.
The
You go
city's
in-
always had liability on it with our previous inspector, cause if he went and did his inspection and everything was fine, and a water heater blew up and it was installed wrong, the city was liable.
Well, in
That-
today's
That's the
day-
way it's always been.
Right. In today's day and age, we could be liable because we don't have a rental code too. Like that could be another reason that cities are moving towards this, is because at some point you could be deemed not taking care of your citizens by not having.
Shoot, your insurance premiums could go down.
They will.
I doubt that'll happen.
No.
Haven't you seen insurance?
I'm all for it.
They've
Be
been going up.
optimistic here.
You'll be lucky if they don't double.
I mean, I don't think we're looking at proposing like 100 pages of basic minimum standards. I've seen some cities with just a few pages of like these basic safety things. So I would like to see us decide kind of how we want to go about starting this, because this is gonna be done with all of your input. We're not, like Blake mentioned, we're not just saying you're gonna have to go tear out all of your windows because they're from 100 years ago. Do you have a window? Does it open? We're not making you take it out. Just because
Can a regular sized person get out of it?
regular.
Can a regular contractor that turns another person in be found out?
No.
I wanna know how big he is.
No, he's regular sized.
Alan earmuffs.
He or she.
But if we have a 3-page basic safety thing,
John,
does that not make sense to
wasn't
have
that
that on
contract
any
doing what you
time of
wanted people
transfer?
to do? I thought you said if they work somewhere, they should rat them out.
Yeah.
You know what he did?
So, I'm gonna have to.
And
look
he's
into
already
that.
looking at reprisals.
He's gonna have some flat tires if I find out who he is. Well,
I'm sorry, John, I didn't mean to.
no, that's all right. I got pretty broad shoulders as you know. One of the things that you say continually, safety, 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 smoke detectors,
Right.
an extinguisher. What was it, 2 or 3 years ago, my insurance guy told me, hey, make sure you have these in because I've replacement cost insurance. Now, granted, I agree with you on that. Those are safety issues that we all get lax on because so many of our tenants, they burn the pizza and the thing's buzzing, so they take a broom and they smack the damn thing rather than, open the window and let it turn itself off.
They steal your carbon monoxide detector.
That's pricey, yes, $30,
Yeah, they
$35.
do that.
In multifamily, they all disconnect them. It just-
Well, Park Apartments, they just, cut a hole in the carpet in the living room,
Yeah.
then set a fire pit there.
Well,
If they get their power and everything shut off.
Can't
No,
fix it.
they're
You can't
supposed to be
fix it.
federally suspected. I don't
Perfectly
know how
round.
that-
so what we've really dealt with, in my opinion, tonight is we've scratched the scab off.
Right, right.
I believe that, come what high water we're gonna have with this.
I think the council as a whole has been wanting this for a while and has decided it's time to do it. That's
See, a
why-
while to a 70-year-old is 20 years. A while to a young kid like you, you're talking 6 months, that's a while.
I've been on council for a couple years now, and this is something that I've been told they've been wanting for at least a decade. Or it's not 20 years.
A decade, he wanted an inspection, mostly because he couldn't stand the guy that was the inspector. Tell the truth.
Because he never did his goddamn job and we paid him.
Should have fired him, I guess.
Don't look at me like that.
You should have been.
We tried and you said no.
What does Bud say? Does he ever say anything? Or he doesn't have to say anything?
Yeah, he was
That's
happy
the
with
big
everything the way it's going.
deal.
No, I'm just saying, John.
All right.
I know you fought me on it for all the years I've been on there.
But I still maintain that what he is explaining to us, this group tonight, these places that are so horrible, I would be amazed if you can find 3 of them. I would. I'd be amazed if you can find 3 of them right now today that are that bad, unless they're a hoarder, which, as you well know, that's a mental issue. You don't dare touch them now.
Right, so that's why Chad and I were talking a little bit about mental health resources and trying to find other avenues to help you guys out. But again, this is just the first step in addressing this. So I think I have all of your email addresses at this point. Gary sent me a list of everyone who was on there, so I can make sure that you guys are added onto it. I would like to email you guys what some other cities similar to our size are doing, because I did find some that have really concise policies, and then we can, in between meetings, can be looking those over and see what seems feasible for Vinton, for the properties that you guys own, what our city actually needs. Because again, we're not looking to make you remodel properties in its entirety. We're just looking at the bare minimums for safety standards. So we can email those out, that way everyone has time to look them over, and we can start looking at what we might want to actually include in our own city ordinance.
Has the city of Vinton adopted the state code then, or not?
That's what we're defaulted to without our own, aren't we?
Okay, you guys keep bringing up landlord-tenant laws and state code. What does it say other than shall provide safe conditions?
Well,
That gets, that is all very much about leases and all that stuff, but very little about actual building stuff.
next time I come, I'll be able to quote that to you.
Would you guys like to plan on meeting monthly at this juncture? Do you want to fit a meeting in at the end of this month, or wait till September? I think if we don't want this to drag on
Maybe
for
a year from now.
a year from now.
I think we'll be a little business by then.
There you go. That's a great idea.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
So we have the quote-unquote draft. It's really, like, again, it is really just kind of an idea. I think it'd be very helpful if the committee members could go through that, highlight things that they think make sense, that can work, and mark off the things that absolutely are just not okay with you, and why. Because that will really give us something constructive to actually build off of.
Is that different from the other one, like the new, Knoxville, Oskaloosa?
It is different from that one.
That would be good to email out.
Yeah, I mean, whichever one you guys want to go through, all I have seen is just that one that was circulated way back.
Yes, yep, yep.
And to be clear, I didn't compile that. That was, I added a little bit to that. That was a project of the chiefs and the Ames city administrator several years ago.
Yeah, so that, yeah. How about the first Wednesday of September, Wednesday evening at 6 p.m.? Is that
What number is that?
reasonable?
That's not a good time.
September 6th. Wednesday evenings aren't good for you
Well,
in general, or?
It just that's fire convention time
Okay,
for me, but I don't have to be here.
Yeah. that's fair. There are 5 Wednesdays in this month. We could do August 30th, or we could do September 13th. I will leave it up to you all.
I don't have a life, so.
I'm busy both those Wednesdays, but again, you're just gonna have to pick a date. Who can be here, can be here. So,
Does the 6th look good for everybody else? Wouldn't mind keeping some consistency, first Wednesdays of the month if we can. 6 p.m. okay for you guys? We could do a little earlier in the evening if that works better for you.
6 might work. That might be better.
Okay. Will you won't be here if that one is, okay, okay.
Can you
September
post these meetings to
6th
the
is what
website
we
too?
could do the 13th. Okay.
What's up to go?
Can you post the agendas and the meetings to the website like we agreed upon going forward?
We can, well, this is not even a city council committee, but I think we could probably post the meeting notices. Yeah, I will default to the city administrator for what we should post. This was really just me
Yeah,
making notes of what
we
we need to
agreed
talk
to have them
about.
online so everybody knows when they are.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's do September 13th at 6 p.m. That gets the majority of you all here. September 13th at 6 p.m. And then prior to that, I will email out, and then if you want a printed copy, I can ask Melissa to print one off and have it with you here. So we can all go through either the one that was circulating and make notes on what we should include in ours, things that you don't think we should be including. That way we can kind of go page by page through next time. That way we make some headway. Instead of just talking in possibilities, and we have something actually in front of us to go through.
I'm afraid that if you ask the majority of us to knock out what we don't want to see there, the whole thing.
I think the danger you run with that approach would be that the committee isn't working,
And the council will
and the
take
council
over.
will just adopt this.
Do you guys, so you're gonna have us look at that, do you have in there, these are our musts? Can you also work on that? Because in a 6-page thing, there's not 6 pages of musts.
Right.
Non-negotiable, this has to happen,
I think that can be done easily.
and speed up the process.
Yeah, that,
With the agreement that is not where we will stop.
say that again?
Well, he wants
If
to
I
keep-
give you 3 must-haves of, gotta get out of the windows, the smoke detectors have to work, and you gotta have fire extinguishers, we're not gonna stop at that's the entirety of our rental code. Okay, that's not where we'll stop. I'm not going to do an entire must-haves and it be because this is going to be the rental code. You need to have input as well. You need to have input.
Right, if we want him to make the must-haves, then the council would just make the code and not involve you, and that's not the goal at all. So the other cities that I've seen who've introduced a rental code have not done this. The city council has come in and done it, or their inspection department has done it. So I haven't seen many cities that are trying to do what we're doing, which is making this something where you guys have input because it impacts you.
with you guys, we don't.
Is it wise to reach out to the tenants? See if it's
Yeah,
something they want?
MJ, you brought up that we needed to do a survey. I think that is a very important thing that we do because it's gonna give us a lot of input. What that survey looks like, how it goes out, that can be discussed in another meeting, but I think that is a must that should happen.
So we can add that to our next meeting's agenda too, is creating a survey for the tenants too. So we can do that and then start going through almost line by line, just some things. So, but that gives us like 6-ish weeks to start that. I'll get stuff emailed out by this weekend.
Do you
So,
think you can
start
find a
that.
hard number also?
For
as to how many
units?
units there are down?
Yeah, it's a little hard. I know utility billing can run some reports that can kind of pull stuff out. I've done a lot of my own picking through. I've reached out to the assessor's office of taxpayer versus property address, so that can pull some out, but there's a good number of them where deed holder mailing address is the same, but they're not the ones that live there. I did get pretty close. I think the mailing that we sent out was pretty close to all of the landlords in town, and so I can get a pretty close number.
Yeah, just curious. It'd just be fun to know.
I can get probably within a couple dozen.
Your post office could actually tell you, but they won't.
We'll try to have that for the next meeting too, just a rough idea of how many. So I said by the weekend, by next week, because it's Wednesday already, so within a week, I'll make sure that I have everybody emailed out with the meeting reminder as well as an electronic copy of a document to start going through. And then if you want a physical copy, just let me know and I can ask Melissa to have those just here.
So, question, Blake. Okay, we have all the landlords that have houses and apartment buildings here in town. Has anybody gotten hold of the park apartments?
They are federally funded and they will not be part of this.
But they are still in the city of Vinton.
It is very explicit on federal funded things, and I will also won't have jurisdiction over assisted living facilities, group homes, any sort of place that receives state or federal funding. They are their own sphere of inspection.
So find out if they've got
Trailer
state
park?
inspections on that.
Did you contact whoever's responsible for?
Darwin T. Liner still in charge of that?
It is still the liners.
Yeah.
I guess what is
Well,
it?
I'm
What's
just-
the end goal of that? What are we hoping to gain?
Well, I mean, we're picking on the people that own properties here in town, but we have, yes, I just did. You know me, John, I don't shut up for anybody. But you need to talk to them and have them inspect their own stuff too.
Yes, but
Find out if
again,
that's
I don't have that authority.
Right. You can contact.
I can poke, but I can't make.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm
So
not gonna shut up.
I poked the railroad, and I think I'm good on poking federal entities for a while.
So I think that's all for our actual agenda tonight. I appreciate all of you being part of this.
Trying to get me to shut up.
I'm letting you know that I'm gonna end the meeting, so anyone who wants to leave can, and you can keep talking if you want to.
I'm done listening to Ron.
So we'll meet back here again September 13th. By next Wednesday, I will have you guys all emailed a document to go through. If you want a hard copy, so you can make notes,
Yeah,
things,
yeah.
let me know.
Yeah, you can get
and I'll
them.
have Melissa get
Would you like to buy a couple of duplexes?
them. I'm not.
I would not. Did you wanna think about that?
Maybe in my next
Too bad.
profession,
Yeah.
I will.
Wish I could've-
not-
What is your profession?